Welcome back to another episode of On the Subject. I'm your host, Michael Vilardo. We're so excited to have you here today. We have an incredibly special guest. We have a former star athlete turned academic icon. His passion across incredible vendors in the space have helped leading to tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of students. We're so excited about his vision because currently he is the Chief Academic Officer at TPH, Total Package Hockey, Total Package Academy, helping student athletes all across the globe with campuses in many different countries. And we're so excited to have you here today. Welcome to the show, Adam Ewing.
Thank you.
No, so I have to always start with the sports because we talk so much about the parallels to sports to life. And so you play football at Bryant, incredible institution. How hard was it to get recruited there? And what are your tips for our student athletes out there?
Oh, I think everybody's athletic path and academic path is unique and different. Mine was, I didn't really get involved to organize sports. We couldn't afford it growing up until I got to high school. So I didn't step foot on a football field with pads on until I was a sophomore, which kind of, as you know, slowed down my recruiting cycle. So I'm developing kind of into the game. Bryant was, I had a choice here. I either go to Bryant and start a football team from scratch. First year was very interesting, or I walk on somewhere local in Miami, FIU, FAU, UCF, USF. I got recruited by a couple more schools, and Bryant was my choice, and I'm glad I needed that man coverage of a small campus.
Yeah, and it's in Rhode Island, correct? So talk about, you went from Southern Florida to Rhode Island. That's a big culture difference. How did you assimilate with the systems up there? And what did you think about living in such a different, unique environment, especially as such a young man?
Oof. It was a bit of a social experiment in the beginning. It was very different for me. Only knowing South Florida, multicultural, melting pot. It took me some time but I would say the small community, I started to appreciate it. I learned a different way of living in the Northeast compared to Southern Florida. Starting a football team was unique, as you can imagine. You drop 100 young alpha males on a campus that has been operating without a football team. And
it's a big culture shock to them too.
It was, exactly. So you had a lot of the people who were the big dogs there, and then you introduce us, and we learned our way through it, but it was a good experience for me. I needed to learn that there's a different way of doing things. There's the difference in education with Florida and the Northeast. There were people driving towards certain goals that I realized I was not there yet. So it pushed me in a way academically that I hadn't hit that gear coming out of South Florida. It really introduced me to a group of people that were driven. They had plans already for their masters, and I'm just trying to get through my freshman year. And so it charged something up inside of me, being in the Northeast and learning how I can put my education to work for me.
Yeah, so that's one thing we definitely wanted to touch on was, where do you think student athletes can understand how to better leverage sports to great degrees? You talked about how you had the calculus to be able to go start a new D1 program, be able to get to an incredible part of the country and leverage sports to a great degree. How can we help more student athletes be able to understand how important school is?
I think you use the right phrase in that leverage. How I see athletics now, which was very different when I was going through it, is it's a tool. It's something you love to do. There is some controversy out there when you get into the smaller schools, right? Why am I joining this smaller school to continue to chase this dream and play this game that I love? While getting an education, and what does that look like for my future? For me, and this would be my advice to any young athlete, is what it does is it opens up doors and choice. And it gives you the ability to say, yes, I'm going to play this game, but now where I had one or two choices, if I'm going to go stay home locally and do this academically, I had the opportunity to go to another state. I had another culture, experience something different, learn different sides of me, how I'm going to react to playing in a game where it's freezing and there's...
Oh yeah, you probably never dealt with the snow before.
Never, ever. Quite the opposite. And so made some of the best friends I ever made. And I think that's what it does. It allows choice. It allows you to stay in control of the decision-making process and give you more options as you're looking at your future. And if one door closes, you say, okay, there's a couple more open to me because of this game I love to play.
So when you think about being able to stay involved in, whether it's coaching or the Bryant community, like what's it been like as an alumni to a program like that? And how do you recommend other student athletes to stay involved with being able to continue to cultivate the love for the sport that gave them so much in life?
Oof. It's not, so I don't want to pretend it's all positive. I think when...
Oh, I like that. Please lean into the truth here. Yeah. Everything in life is about authenticity.
Right. So Bryant was tough because when you're starting a football program, you don't really have an identity. And as you know, in sports,
it's hard.
You're creating an identity for yourself. You're battling this relationship with this sport. Yep. Right. I have this idea of how it's going to work out. I have this idea of my education and how it's going to work out. So as I saw many of my friends, and we're trying to build a team, and I'm trying to be a leader and a captain and help build this team. And every year you're seeing 50% of the team leave because they're going on to something different, or this didn't work for me, or there's no established tradition. And so I'm trying to figure out while I'm leaning into that, what does this mean for me and my identity? Like, how much do I really love this game to keep playing at this level? Do I want to transfer back home? We didn't have the transfer portal back then.
No, yeah, it was a lot harder. You had
to sit out
the
a year.
Loopholes, yeah.
And then at the same time, my integrity of, hey, I made a commitment to this group. Do I stay here? And so there was a lot of back and forth, inner turmoil, once again, teaching me lessons, learning about myself, watching my teammates go through it. When I came on at Bryant, they recruited, there was about 7 of us from Miami, and I was the only one that ended up graduating within that class.
Wow.
The cold weather, the culture.
That's hard. People want to go home all the time.
And so it was an inner battle almost every year. I ended up graduating with a double major.
Let's go. Congratulations.
Yeah, it put things into perspective for me.
Well, so actually, this is an unplanned question. I love where we're going with this. So you talked about having the calculus of saying, hey, like I might not want to go somewhere because I might have to sit out, which, I went through that as well. Now it's such free movement, which I think is great for the players, and I think it's awesome for the economic outcome for the players. But can you talk about some of those rigidity that actually potentially helped you in figuring out how to be able to navigate tough circumstances in your life? I think it's interesting to see how this college athletics plays out over the next 2-3 years, but there is some value, I believe, in saying, hey, you're a freshman at a campus, you're stuck for a little bit, you have to figure out how do you make it positive for you and dealing with hard things. Life is so many hard things. Life's hard. You're going to get bad news potentially every day, at least every week. How do you navigate that, and how does that teach you saying, hey, I'm going to stick it out here? And I was able to figure out how to get a double major degree.
I think there's, you said staying power and academic grit. I think what I'm learning about as I'm getting into it, I just turned 45. I'm a parent.
Nice, congrats.
Thanks. I want my kids to have grit. Right?
Yeah, grit's everything.
Some of the things that I had to go through to develop grit, I don't want my kids to learn those lessons.
Yeah, right. That's fair, yeah.
We got on a bike, we went, and we came home at a certain time. Yeah. And
those were good times.
Our friends challenged us. We're probably doing some things that were really stupid, but we learned a lot of lessons through that. So staying in a situation, and it was hard, right? Because I think what I learned through it by talking to some of my friends who transferred, the grass isn't always greener.
No, it's not.
The version of this coach who I don't like, there's a version of that over there.
Yep.
And so the ability to have staying power and proving to yourself that you can stay and do something hard and there was a little bit of pride of everybody's leaving, they can't hack it, but I can. And so it taught me something about myself. That was the biggest lesson. And I think how that plays out in today's recruiting, transfer portal, NIL. Look at IU. I'm a huge Hurricane fan.
Oh, that was a great game. They could have won. They played great.
And we're young.
Yeah.
And I say we as if.
No, I'm excited. I love it.
But IU, they had a bunch of older players that stuck together, that had staying power. They put it together. They built an identity. So I think we're going to see shifts and pendulum swings of that kind of represent what does it mean to keep a group of people together, and what does that do for my brand to show that I'm willing to stick with it?
I love that. So what would you say around college sports? How much of the success is talent versus habits?
Oof.
Especially for our young student athlete listeners out there.
I think talent keeps you in the door, and it's turning into the same thing with academics. It's talent will get you in the door, but staying power and your ability to exercise grit academically and athletically is what gets you to be elite, right? You're doing the little things. My dad says, live your life in high definition. And what he means by
that's a good
that is,
saying.
you look at a TV and it has, the more pixel it has, the better it is.
Yep.
So it's those little decisions that you make every day that accumulate to who you are. And I think as being a part of that, in the same context, that talent is the TV, but those little pixels are the little decisions you make every day that keep you here and then make you elite and give you a career after football, after hockey, after sports.
Absolutely. I want to live my life in high definition. I think that's an amazing way to look at it. So let's fast forward a bit to how you were able to get to where you are now from that incredible student athlete background. You've held leadership positions at a variety of education technology companies. How did you fall into education, and what makes you so passionate remaining today to help so many students?
Yeah, it's a long story, so I can't tell all of it. My entire background, education background, is business. Bryant is a business school, very much known for that. Then I went and got my MBA.
Where'd you get your MBA?
I went with Purdue Global.
Hey, we're both Boilermakers in some capacity.
So I met a gentleman, and once again, doors opening. So I think my talent got me into the conversation where I moved from a business, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I met a gentleman who actually started a business here, Civitas Learning, Charles Thornburg, who brought me into the ed tech space. At the time, it was Kaplan, University of Miami Online High School. Then it was acquired by Kaplan. Kaplan was acquired by K-12.
Yep.
I've taken positions in staying power. We talked about it in college, right? I kind of exercised that grit and said, I want to carve out a niche for me here. I want to learn as much as possible. And so that I parlayed that into learning about districts, learning about statewide charter schools, learning about juvenile justice, and getting education behind systems, building non-traditional learning models across the U.S. and globally. And that all led to an opportunity for me to come over with TPH, who I actually had the opportunity to partner with when I was with another one of those companies, and kept in touch with Bo. They had a need. The beauty of what I'm doing now is there's little pieces of everything that I've done through my career, my 17, 18-year career in education, non-traditional education. I can put those pieces together to deliver on what we need as our strategy at TPH Academy.
Yeah, and can you talk about a little bit with TPH? It started off mostly serving hockey. Now you're expanding to a variety of sports. Can you talk about some of those new sports that you brought to the table with TPH and what your vision is for that with academics?
Yeah, we're moving more and more into, and there's this talk about what we solve. Like what we're trying to solve is kids are specializing. There's a big debate on whether they should or they shouldn't.
What's your thought?
I think at some point you need to specialize, but I think you need enough data, and you're not going to get that data unless you're playing other sports.
I agree. I mean, I'll give my take. Maybe this will be a good clip. But for me, I think sophomore year of high school would be the time that I would approach it. Looking back at what I did, I did both sports until my sophomore year of college. So I'm a huge multi-sport fan, want to be clear, but I do think, exactly to your point, I think in elementary, middle school, it's a gigantic mistake to specialize. Please, parents, do not do this. I think if by the time you're a sophomore, like we were talking about with your football journey even, is that there's a lot of scouting happens now as sophomores. And again, not necessarily agree with it, but if your goal is to play at the highest level, oftentimes that could be a big opportunity.
Well, I think that's what it goes down to, and it's hard. That's why data is your goal.
Yeah, yes.
I needed to be laser focused on football.
Yep.
I couldn't be distracted by anything. By the time I stepped on a field, I didn't have enough data. I was building my sophomore year, putting on pads for the first time,
So fun.
getting over the fear of hitting someone. Do I like to hit someone? Do I want to play offense? Do I want to play defense?
Yeah.
So I'm collecting data I'm behind the ball. So I had to get very focused. But the kids who know where they're headed and they had the ability to try different things, create that muscle memory with some of those other sports that it's going to help them out when they do specialize. But you're learning about yourself through this process. So I think there is a certain point where you can say, here's my lane. I want to stay in it. But you're not going to know that till you know yourself, and you need the data.
And so what can we look for as a student athlete, as a family of student athlete, when I get to choose to go to an incredible place like TPH? Like, what are some of the biggest benefits in the opportunity to develop my skills as an athlete, but also as a student?
Yeah, I'll tie the two together. So using my background in football, there was very little room for error with where I started. So I'm at the mercy of a coach who is getting to know me to say, here's the need I have on a team, and you're going to fill it. And by the way, now that's your identity, you're a linebacker or you're a defensive end or whatever it is. We don't have the luxury of testing out these things. When you get into a model like TPH, there's a certain goal is like, you can work on those little things that you're not going to be able to work on with a coach for an hour and 2 hours where they're laser focused on winning that week, where you can say, you know what, I think I have what it takes to be a goalie. All right, let's test that out. Let's start working on that piece. Or I'm primarily on defense, but I think I can be a tight end. Well, you don't really have time to work those things out in a regular season, in a regular environment. Same thing athletically, right? When a kid is being pulled, and many times why we created this model and the intentionality of it is academics and athletics, once you get over training about 20 hours a week, that's on the precipice of becoming elite. I have mental conditioning, strength and conditioning, all these different pieces that I know make a good athlete. Something compromises usually in a traditional model, starts pulling at it, which is usually the academics, or it's the time you get to spend with your family.
Or the commute.
Yeah,
commute adds up, and that's what's nice about the academies is that you get to be fully committed for the day rather than having to have 3 or 4 different commutes in a day.
Exactly. And so our benefit to the athlete is we're giving you that time and we're saying we trust you with it. You can spend it to develop the areas that you want to develop and that we're going to recommend you develop. And same thing academically. If I want to take 2 summer school classes and 4 during the regular year, a traditional model is going to say no. If you're going to be enrolled in my public school or private school, you have to take a full load of classes. Why? Why can't I use the 12 months in a year to fit what I'm trying to accommodate so that I can be back at my dinner table at night?
Yep.
I don't have 3 hours of homework where I don't get to see my family. And so the Day Academy model, we've expanded to about 21 locations now. And
Incredible. And how many countries now?
We're in 3 countries.
3 countries. That's really, really exciting. And how many sports?
19 different disciplines.
Wow.
So what we see is that even though we'll have an anchor sport, so Valencia, we have soccer.
Yep.
There was a volleyball player. We actually had someone who's a ninja warrior who said, this frees me up to do those things.
Is this in Valencia?
Yeah.
Very, very cool. I love this.
So I can stretch myself, do what I love, still get the education I want, and I still get to see my family and be a teenager.
Yeah. No, and that's true because I even think about, growing up, I played AAA hockey, Team Illinois, Chicago Mission, great experience, love those organizations, but barely any time to, I had zero social life, which, in some capacity, you're like, oh, that's good, you stay focused, but it is lonely when you have an hour commute to the rink after school, you get home at 11:30, got to rush to bed, wake up at 6, and it was really challenging. I would have loved to have an incredible opportunity to go to an academy like yours. I think it was just getting started when I was still in high school, so that was a good roundabout. So one thing that we really wanted to make sure we asked you before we round up is when you think about what's so exciting about the academies today and what your top athletes have done. You had several students at the Olympics, which is so cool. Several professional athletes now. Is there anything that you would recommend the student athletes and what you've seen with your successful TPH athletes that they could replicate at the youngest of age?
That they could replicate at the youngest of age.
Like a 7-8-year-old be like, hey, Rutger McGroarty, Kirsten Sims, this is what they were like growing up. And what they did really great at the academies, and I would recommend, this is the approach you could do as well.
Yeah, it's going to go back to what sports does for for a student athlete. When you're young, it's this weird time of self-actualizing. I'm trying to figure out who I want to be, who I am, and where does sports play a role in my life. And you're going to have a huge spectrum. You're going to have kids who grew up similar to I did, where you need sports. It's a tool. It's going to drive me.
Tool.
It's a motivating factor. That was the carrot that pushed me through a lot, and I had to stay very laser focused on it. So I'd say what our young successful athletes do is we give them agency.
It's all about agency. Agency is the key to education.
And the sport, right?
Yeah, and sports, yes.
Once I've seen the beauty of what I've seen. First of all, the pandemic created this openness to a different way of doing things, which there were a lot of negatives in the pandemic, but that's an education.
There's always a silver lining, yeah.
Work, education, it's changed.
More flexibility.
And you're seeing non-traditional growing across the U.S. and both at higher ed and post-secondary. What I would say is like how they're using their time. That is the biggest thing to focus on at that young age, is to start getting kids used to, when I'm in a traditional model, I'm waiting for my teacher to explain this to me, but she can't or he can't because I'm waiting for the rest of the class to catch up, or they have to focus their attention here. And when you start to realize I could be using this time to be more productive and I can control that, and you give them that agency. So it's almost a mental exercise of, you have so much time in your day. What could you be doing better with that time if you had a different way of doing it? And when that light bulb comes on, I've seen students say, wait a minute, I'm not at the mercy of the teacher or the lowest common denominator in the class. What I can do is speed up. I'm going to finish early. Or I need to get the grade that I want to get. I'm going to slow down. And once that clicks, so the recognition of your time, and I think we deal with it as adults when we wake up in the morning and we're like, I need to have a plan for my day. That's where you start. Is we do a very good job at that at TPH Academy, and using subject to say, you have your day. Let's map it out. Now, it can go off the rails, and then that builds on the week, that builds on the month, that builds on the semester. So realizing the framing of that time and how you're using it, that's where you start to get agency and get control over your experience.
168 hours in a week. Use them to your best of your knowledge and go crush it. But Adam, thank you so much for your time today. That was incredible. And check it out, TPH Academy, incredible place to get a great education and be a star student athlete and leverage sports to the best degree possible. You can do it. Thank you for your time. That was awesome. Thank you.